Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What is awesome health? It's actually an acronym that stands for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitudes, and education. These are the pillars of peak health, and my team and I have created a free 12-week course that you can use to transform. Each day, you'll get a written and video lesson delivered to your inbox. Everything is covered from the foundations of digestion to advanced alternative therapies few people know about. And again, it's 100% free. Just go to bioptimizers.com. That's bioptimizers.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we're going to revisit Dr. Bauman's work that we did. If you go back to episode 506, I believe it is, I embarked upon a public hair restoration project. And the purpose of that was, in that episode, we talked about the intimate connection between one's hair, especially if you're in the health industry, and the perception of it from other people of how healthy you are, how vital you are, how youthful you are. And so many of us in our industry do, internalized aspects when optimizing our cellular regeneration and making sure we have NAD and energy, and we're doing peptides to offset suboptimal genetics, and some people are in hormone replacement and everything. But none of that really impacts one of the biggest visual elements, which is your hair. And I decided on the coaxing of my business partners and friends to say, hey, you got to fix your hair, dude. It's not looking too good, right? And so I said, okay. And fortunately, I had met Dr. Bauman at a biohacking conference. It was at the Dave Asprey conference, and he is voted the #1 hair restoration specialist in all of Canada, or in all the United States, I believe it is.
North America.
And North America. Thank you for that. And so I said, okay, well, let's get on a podcast and let's go through this. And not only was he able to quickly identify the areas that I could improve, but he had a very customized process with his team down in Florida, where I got to fly down. They put me up in a world-class hotel. They had a great thing. It was a procedure over a couple of days that we went through. And the results were, I think, extraordinary. I'm going to invite Dr. Bauman to put up some of the past elements for those who don't remember. And it's funny, I was just at the CHFA, which is the Canadian Health Food Association up in Vancouver, where I used to live 5 or 6 years ago. And I got to connect with a lot of friends and colleagues that I haven't seen in a long time. And they were all like, Wade, you look better than ever before. And it's been, for many of these people, it's been 5 or 6 years since you've seen them. And they're like, wow, you look so young, you look so youthful. And I do believe that perception is directly related to the work that Dr. Bauman was able to do. And it's so funny because I look back at our first interview and I was like, holy geez, did I lose that much hair? And here is the beautiful part for those who are sensitive about hair loss or experiencing it, and you're kind of edging towards a suboptimal hair piece. The remarkable thing is about 3 or 4 months after I had my procedure done, and I'd taken a shower and I got into the mirror and I was running my hand through my hair, and I was like, my hair is actually thick. Now, what was interesting about that is I've never experienced that at any point in my life. I have relatively very fine hair to begin with. I'm blonde and all that sort of stuff. So I am surprised and delighted about not just the process that I went through, but the personal experience, as well as the collective perspective and compliments I've gotten around that since that time. So I wanted to bring Dr. Bauman back. He's taken time out of his busy schedule in order to come up here and educate and share some insights. And we're going to put up some old pictures. So if you're thinking about hair restoration, I know a lot of people are going to Europe for, less expensive treatments and stuff. But when it comes to this, you don't want to mess around. You want to make sure you have a world-class surgeon that is able to, put this restoration process in. And I can share with you, it was a world-class experience. The results were extraordinary, and I'm delighted with the effects. So, hey, welcome to the show, Dr. Bauman.
Hey, Wade. Right. Well, thank you so much for having me on the Awesome Hair podcast. It's really great to be here with you. And it's great to see the results, here on the video in person, obviously. Looks great. So, yeah, great to be here with you and great to follow up on that procedure that we did for you, well over a year ago. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, tell me about what's it like for you? I guess we'll start right. What's it like for you? You get people that, finally cross the threshold to actually do something, which I did. And you can go through that process preemptively for those who want to listen to that podcast at 506. And then here seeing the post results. How does that impact you as a person in your team?
So the post-op results, seeing you like basically glowing, right, and also your hair growing is totally the payoff for me as a hair restoration physician for almost 30 years, right? I've dedicated my life to try to help people who are struggling with hair loss, and many folks don't realize kind of like how maybe not necessarily down, but how good it could be when their hair comes back. And it's a very highly emotional organ, these little hair follicles, and I think their impact is a little bit underestimated. But it's always every single day, and like I said, nearly 30 years, over 35,000 patients, and 14,000 surgeries. Every single day, I get to see people who we've helped grow back their hair thicker, better, stronger, and healthier, whether it be through non-invasive treatments or like what you had, hair transplantation. And that's truly the payoff. That's truly the thing that keeps me going every single day. And it's so cool to do the photos, do the comparisons, talk about the journey. And then obviously the next bit of business is to keep your hair growing strong. And so, usually that's the next bit of the conversation. But seeing the actual results and hearing the patients tell their story about how things have changed, people are noticing that they look more vital, they look healthier, and they may not even know it's the hair, because it's growing in subtly. And unless you went from bare to hair and you haven't seen somebody in a long, long time, like a year or two, they may not even know exactly why you're looking better, because today the technology is so good. It's artistic and it's highly technical. It's not quick, but it gets the job done and it looks amazing. And so it's really it's a fun practice to have, and truly hearing the positive benefits from our patients directly firsthand every single day. That's the payoff for me, for sure.
Excellent. Well, maybe you can pop up some pictures to remind our audience as to where Wade was before, and it's fun. You can pop on there. So here's where I was at when I came down to the clinic, and you can see. Maybe you can describe some of those elements.
Yeah, so I mean, what we're looking at here is a deep receded hairline, but even more than that, you've lost the quality and the texture and the density all throughout this frontal zone here. So what we're really looking at is severe male pattern hair loss. You really didn't have a whole lot of hair left. And what happens is that, and this is very common, the hairline will recede on the temples, and then it will thin out, what I call it, in the mid scalp here, right across the top, and it'll leave you with this little tuft of hair in the middle. And it can eventually be very difficult to kind of comb that to make it look right. And when we look at how things were when you first came in, you'd have to literally comb that backwards to get it to comport with the rest of your hair. But overall, it was a very, very thin, weak, and wispy head of hair. You didn't have a whole lot of coverage there. And so a couple of things needed to be done. Not only did we need to put you on a regimen of treatment to stop the progression of the hair loss, and maybe we can get into how good or not so good you've been with that, but also we can look at the areas that were totally bare or gone prior to your transplant. And what we had to do is essentially go find those follicles that are permanent around the sides and the back of the scalp and implant them into the thinning and the balding areas. And so for most people, it's like, wow, that, it sounds like a painful process. You could probably tell people what it was like. I hope you remember that it was a comfortable process. And really within 4 or 5 days, you could be back in the gym, working out and doing your regular routine. As long as you're not, putting that area at risk for trauma in the first couple of days. And then of course, once the scabs flake off, you're back to normal. And the process, as we say, essentially is minimally invasive. It's an individual follicular unit extraction process. So there's no linear or strip excision of any kind. There's no stitches or staples that are used in this process. There's no linear scar left behind. And so this is a very advanced procedure. It's microsurgical. It is laborious. But for us here at the clinic, it's labor of love. And it's a fun practice to have. And so, and you're a testament to the results right here.
Yeah,
So
thanks. So
do
for
you
people,
remember
just
what?
look at the difference. I can put my hair down just like this,
Yeah,
and
that
you can
looks
see
amazing.
the dramatic differences here
Oh,
in my
I mean, look,
hair.
we did not give you that straight across hairline that you see over there on TikTok from a lot of these foreign clinics that look kind of bizarre and unusual, and of course unnatural. We gave you a more conservatively shaped hairline. We kind of followed the hairline that you had, and that's really, really important. When you turn your head to the side like that, you can really see. I'm going to share one more time. We'll see if we
Maybe
can
over
put the
here on
before and
this
the after
side.
together here. Yeah, just take a look at this. And so,
Yeah,
there you go. I mean,
and you can
now
see it
you
on
have a
this side
real
here. Yeah,
hairline in and around through the temple areas, and of course, bulking up that density in an incredible way in that frontal zone. And
yeah,
that,
yeah. Just to comment on that, we were commenting just before we started the podcast. Is about it was a few months after the treatment that I woke up one morning. I got out of the shower and I was combing my hair back, and I was like, my goodness, my hair is thick. I've never had hair in my life. It's actually better than at any point I can ever remember. I always had a high foreline. I always had a high forehead and up here. And you commented about that because I had seen some hair transplants from, I would say less qualified professionals, or, less expensive. I'll just put it out there to people. And you have to realize you get what you pay for. And I can remember when I went down to the clinic, we had met and we had done some photos and everything. When we went down to the clinic, you had a special device that did a whole 360 element. And then what was cool is you said, I approached this as an artist. And you looked at my facial features, you looked at my head, you looked at the skull, you did this whole video thing, and then you drew some lines and said, this is what's going to look natural and it's going to grow in an appropriate way. And you actually over-delivered on my expectations. I was blown away. I'm like, wow. And now it's been over a year, like a year and a half or something like that
yeah,
since I've been
yeah,
back.
almost 2 years.
Yeah, and I've had been wearing my hair longer, and it was just so full and thick. I saw my old hairstylist up in Vancouver, and I said, my hair is too much all over the place. You got to cut this down. He's a really good stylist. He was the guest artist for one of the big brands internationally he was the cutting expert to show all the cutting styles. And he's dealt with a lot of hair restoration programs. He's also gone through it himself. He confessed to me, he says, Wade, this is literally the best hair restoration element I've ever seen. He's in his 70s. Still cutting hair, still loving life, still, making people look great. He goes, whoever is your hair restoration specialist, they did an amazing job. I've never seen a job this good. And he's worked with my hair for 25 years. And I actually fly in to see him periodically to cut my hair because he's that good. And I go see my friends in Vancouver, and we used to joke about it because I said, one day I'm going to do that. I'm just going to fly into Vancouver. And now I go regularly because he understands the cutting styles that complement what you've been able to do surgically. So
No,
yeah.
and that's really important. That's super important. Having a good stylist, and we have some exceptional ones down here in South Florida, for sure. So I found the photos from your procedure, which was over 4,000 grafts. Because we worked in the frontal zone, the hairline, the temples, and we worked further back. Do you want to remember what it looked like while you were
Yeah, oh,
in the
absolutely.
game,
We
so
got
to
to show
speak?
the proof here.
Okay, so here I'm gonna share it up again. Let me click the button here, and I'm going to share up. So this is what your grafted area looked like immediately after the procedure. So this is 24 hours out from the procedure. We could see we did all the way around through the temple areas, this new hairline down here, and a little right into where you had your existing hair in the front and center, all the way back into this zone here. And so, and then again on the other side. And of course, we were doing a large session of transplants. So we did give you a wide shave around the sides and the back, although it's not mandatory anymore to shave your head for a procedure. But you can certainly see there in the back, this is the crusting and the scabbing that's going to be visible immediately after the procedure. So each of these little tiny red dots that you see in the photo, that is where we've extracted the hair, essentially. And the follicles have been permanently relocated into the crown area here. And then again, as we said, just right in through the front and center there. And so that was your day. That was your procedure day. 4,400 grafts or so, or 3 days worth of work there to get the job done.
And
Now,
about how
do you
much?
remember how long it took to heal?
Yeah, I think it was, I think like a couple of weeks or so for the scabs to heal. I had to wear a little. I still have my Dr. Bauman do-rag because I was always
Nice.
a big wrestling fan in the 80s, and every now and then I'll bring it out just for fun because it's like, oh wow, I remember when I was wearing this and for a few weeks. And
So
then
for most people, the crusting and the scabbing usually lasts somewhere between 6 and 10 days. But there's some interesting things that we're doing now to accelerate that recovery process that we didn't have when you had your procedure 2 years ago. So there's been
wow.
some new innovations to really have patients get back into their regular routine even more quickly. Most patients today don't need any kind of hardcore pain medication after this type of procedure. And most patients, like I say, are back in the gym in 4 days. And most of the time, their scalp is literally clean from the scabs by 8 days. So 7 or 8 days, the crusts are flaking
Oh
off
yeah, I was back.
if they're
I
here
was
with
back in
us.
the. I was back in the gym next week. I was very careful with, sitting in the sleeping in the appropriate position. I had all these pillows around me and the
Yep.
stuff so that I was like not affecting any of the transplant elements. I don't think I lost a single hair or anything that you did. How much? How
Nice.
many? What was the? How much space on that picture that you had were you actually filling in? Like how much in
Oh,
inches or whatever do you estimate that was about?
well, it could be anywhere about 600 square centimeters to fill, depending on the size of the session that we're doing. It can vary. In your particular case, just think of it like this. We did the frontal zone, right, which was the hairline, the temples, and the front, all the way through that mid scalp area. And then we did work into the crown area. We probably put another 1,500 grafts back there. So probably about 2,500 in the front, and at least 1,500 to almost 2,000 in the back. So it was a pretty big procedure. I think we were at 4,400 or so, plus or minus a little bit, went by the time we were done.
Wow, it was incredible. And how many hours did that take? It was over a few days.
So yeah, this is not a fast procedure. For a large session like that, we usually book that over several days. So it's going to be typically up to 3 days long. And so those hours in the chair, usually it's about 6 hours of procedural time in the chair each day. And so remember, there's also a little break for lunch, and you're going to stretch your legs and to the bathroom and back and so forth. Maybe a snack comes through. But we are starting with you in the early morning, and you're back at the hotel before dinner and just relaxing at night, getting some good rest, good sleep. And then obviously we're doing it again the day after and the day after that, if it's a large session of transplants.
Yeah, and was car sessions picked me up, took me in. They ordered my meals every day. That was to my liking. I'm a little finicky on my diet to be a
Yeah.
confession.
Oh,
And
we
they
make
had
it all
everything
happen.
figured, and it was all so seamless. And the other aspect is your staff was extremely friendly and really made me comfortable during the whole procedure. The chair was world class. So, being there all day long, working on that stuff didn't seem like a problem. And I was actually fascinated and didn't experience a lot of pain or anything like that. I took no pain killing medication afterwards or any of the other elements. Now, what did differ from some of the suggestions, I didn't use any of the other elements afterwards, like some of the things that you recommended or suggested. I thought, I'm going to just kind of go it alone. Since that time, I have had a number of V-cell in injections, which is a form of taking your blood out, spinning it, putting it through a laser and a frequency machine, and then activating your own stem cells that comes in, and that goes systematically through the system. And
very familiar with that because we work closely with Dr. Joe Parita here in Boca, who is really one of the leaders of that movement. And so he's a great orthobiologic guy and has done many of those types of treatments, not only for our patients for healing, but also in his orthopedic practice as well.
Yeah, and it's been great, just remarkable, and I'm constantly in awe. I am, like, I literally, every time I wash my hair, every time I wash my hair, I did it this morning. I was looking forward to the podcast, and I'm like, I have a great experience every day. And the only time I wear a ball cap now, I used to wear a ball cap a lot. And you talked about this in our earlier podcast about how what typically men do. And by the way, guys, women are onto that strategy. It's the middle-aged ball cap strategy to hide the elements. And we often say, oh, my hairstylist isn't right. I can't get my hair right, or this sort of thing. And I'll just put a ball cap. So the only time I wear a ball cap now is when I wake up in the morning to go to the gym and it's so messy and all over the place. I'll put that on before I take a shower because I go to the gym and then shower when I get back. And that's the only time I wear it. And sometimes I don't. I want to talk one other element too, because the difference between the hair that you took from my back or from the back side of my head and then what you installed in those areas you described, it's actually different types of hair. Is that right? You want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the reason why hair transplants work is that the hair that's located, those follicles that are around the sides and the back of the scalp, those are immune to your body's hormones. Which is really the main trigger for male pattern hair loss. And so when we take those follicles from the back and the sides, we transplant them into the new area, they will live and grow there permanently. They're essentially resistant to the male pattern hair loss process. Now, there may be other things that could dysregulate the hair, your lifestyle factors, toxin exposure, inflammation, sleep-wake cycles, nutrition, stress. All of those things can make your hair really much worse much quickly, more quickly. And certainly if you need certain types of medication, even for survival, God forbid you need a cancer drug or something like that, it's going to knock your hair out no matter where it came from. But the follicles from the sides and the back of the scalp are virtually immune to male pattern hair loss. But this brings us back to the other issue, is that you started out with a little bit of hair up there. You weren't completely bare or bald in all locations. And so it would be prudent to do something, now, whether it's V-cell or other regenerative treatment. And for some folks, it's red light therapy or good nutritions or nutritional therapy or herbs. And for others, it might be medication choices or peptides or things like that. But you really should have, as part of your program, Wade, and this is why I'm here to kind of remind you that we need to continue to measure your hair and make sure that the other hair, the non-transplanted hair, is not weakening over time. And so there is a bit of a parallel battle. You restore the hair that you've lost, but you also have to protect the hair that you've got at the same time. And that's truly one of the things that's missed by most clinics that are out there. And it's just because it takes time to go through that. And physicians are just not going to measure you. They're not going to spend the time to talk to you about it, especially if you're flying to a distant, far away location. There may be a language barrier. There may be other issues where they're not really so keen on helping you protect your other hair. But in my clinic, that's something we routinely do. In fact, patients are encouraged to come back in and get measured every 90 days. And there's no charge for that. They just come in. We get measured, make sure that their measurements are on point. So just like if you're measuring, your hemoglobin A1C or your blood pressure or your body mass index or your VO2 max or whatever it might be, this is another biomarker that you really want to put on your radar if you're concerned about your hair.
So let's talk about some of those things, because I purchased a red light device from your clinic post-op. I used it religiously for a while. I've been derelict in the last while because I've been enamored with the success, and that's probably a big faux pas. And I want to talk about some of the post-op elements that you suggest. And then even if you are still subject to hair loss as you identified, what's the periodic or maybe the range of when a person might come back for more hair restoration, or what is the process intermediary? You can kind of maybe explain some of those nuances from your experience. How many years have you been doing this?
So almost 30 years
Right.
in practice. I started my practice here in Boca in 1997 after I did a fellowship in hair transplant. I worked in a clinic up in Long Island, New York for a year. As I said, over 35,000 patients and 14,000 surgeries, and about the same number, 13 to 14,000 regenerative treatments like PRP and such, we've performed here. And I have my clinic in Boca, as you saw, is a 13,000 square foot facility. We're actually under construction again. To build out a little bit more breadth and depth to the practice and to help more patients with their hair loss issues and other things. But you asked about red light therapy, and I'm a huge advocate for red light therapy, because in the 1990s, when someone told me that they were using these lasers to grow hair, in Sweden and Europe and other places, I thought it was hocus pocus. I said, you know what, there's really no way that could work. No one in any medical class that I took in medical school or undergraduate in my training did they ever talk about how visible light is going to have an effect on animal cells. We just didn't talk about that. I mean, we all know how photosynthesis works, and we all know that UV radiation could damage DNA and cause cancer and things like skin cancer, make you more prone to that. But nobody talked about red light therapy. That was just unheard of. And so I was convinced that it was just hocus pocus. And so one of the things that I did with this early distributor of red light devices here near Boca Raton is I actually convinced him to bring me this big unit. And the thing looked like a salon hair dryer. It was massive, and it was hundreds of pounds. And I started to treat patients with it. He lent it to me, and I was dead set on disproving this. And we put some friends and family under this thing, even folks with really severe hair loss. And what I started to notice right away is that even people with just only hair around the sides and the back of their scalp, it started to grow faster and thicker, to the point where their hairstylists were asking, what is going on with their hair? And even though they weren't growing any hair in the bald zones, the other zones were flourishing. And so that opened my eyes dramatically. And obviously here we are, nearly 30 years later, we have FDA cleared devices for hair regrowth. We finally tuned the Bauman turbo laser cap, which is the one that you have, from the original inventor, Dr. Michael Rabin, of the original laser cap based in Ohio. So these are American made, American assembled, doctor designed, engineered by MIT and MIT electrical engineers and tested by the very best researchers in the world in photomedicine, from Harvard and Wellman Center for Photomedicine up in Boston, and Mass General. So this is the premier device. The one that you have that you don't use, shame on you, is the Bauman Turbo Laser Cap. It's got more coverage area than any other laser device. And it's not an LED. This is not like a little flashlight. This is a laser device that helps grow people's hair thicker, better, and stronger, and can help you heal faster after a transplant. And that's why we prescribe and dispense so many of them to our patients. They're amazing.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
So let's talk about what would, because I want to upgrade my hair care. It's part of why we were on the call, because I'm like, you know what, I know that you can't go to the gym once and be done, and here I am,
right.
advocating for procedures, practices, and things that make you look and feel your best, and then I'm like, where am I not? Where am I not living my procedures? And I was like, okay, this is it. We got to get Dr. Bauman back and do that. So since I've been there, what are the standard practices for using the Bauman turbo laser, maybe some other elements that people can include in their hair care post-op?
Sure. So, turbo laser cap, obviously, it's a non-chemical, non-invasive treatment regimen that will grow thicker, stronger, healthier hair, and especially heal you faster after a hair transplant procedure. Just 5 minutes a day. So that's super simple. You acquire the device. It's a lifetime purchase, basically. It's one time purchase. So if you think about the cost for that kind of a device, even though the turbo is on the higher end in terms of comparing it to, like, let's say, an Amazon, piece of plastic. This is going to be highly portable, packs completely flat, and could potentially be your least costly treatment over time. So it's a very highly valuable device for hair regrowth, because hair has to be treated over time. This is not like a one and done fix. Yes, the transplants are permanent, but your other hair is not. So that's why we talk a lot about the ongoing care. And aside from laser therapy, there's plenty of other therapies. When you had your procedure, I'm not sure if you remember, but we also did PRP, platelet-rich plasma. So as you know, that's a regenerative medicine tool that we use. We harvest out and harvest the blood, separate the platelets, preserve the monocytes. We also light it up with photobiomodulation, and we do some very special things to make it work in the scalp for healing and also for hair growth over the long haul. So a single PRP treatment in my practice, which without a transplant would be basically just an hour, that gives you a boost of hair growth that lasts for about a year. And we've measured and documented that in well over 10,000 patients. So that's a very, very important thing that you're missing out on, because it's now 2 years out from your procedure and you did not have a repeat PRP.
Right.
So time is of the essence, Wade. When you come down to Florida, we will execute a PRP treatment for you. And today we can add other layers of therapy into that session, which again would be just a lunchtime session without any recovery or downtime. It's 100% painless, as opposed to what they're doing in the derm clinics and plastic surgery clinics. We use the ring block that we use for hair transplant, so there's no discomfort at all. You will not feel any of the injections of the PRP. We can also deploy exosome therapy at the same time. We can use PDO threads, which is a newer technology of applying a synthetic scaffolding under the skin, just almost microscopically. And all of these things added together are non-pharmaceutical ways to get your existing hair to grow thicker, better, and stronger.
So, and how often would you come in to do those type of treatments is appropriate on a perfect schedule?
Yeah, so there's no rule, because every patient responds a little bit differently. Honestly, as you know, and being in regenerative medicine, sometimes it's related to the power and strength of the treatment, and then sometimes it's related to the regenerative effect that your body creates after the treatment, right? And so, for example, patients who are, let's say, in some way depleted, either nutritionally or they have toxin exposure or whatever, their PRP may not work as well. They may need it more often. Or we may need to fine tune it because they have a low platelet count in their blood circulation. But typically, I would say 90% of folks need it once a year. And then I have a small cohort of patients that can do it later on than that, maybe 18 months or even sometimes every other year. And then there's another small cohort of patients that just need it more often. And so if you play by the odds, which we like to do because everybody doesn't fit into individual categories so easily, we always say to patients, it's going to be about a year, but let's measure it to see what your individual response is to this treatment.
Yeah, I think I'm scheduled to come down in that area in September, so I'm gonna have to line something
Nice.
up and get another follow-up session. I haven't been down to Florida since I was down to
Oh, wow.
your clinic, and so I'm like, I'm remiss. I was gonna go onto another event, and I try to stack up a bunch of things, and then I didn't go to that event, and I missed it. So again, another failure on my part. And Florida's a great place to go hang out. So I mean, like, what's wrong?
Absolutely. And so I just want to remind you that during your procedure, in addition to the over 4,000 grafts that we did, we absolutely did PRP And we did the threads, which is the PDO, polydioxanone. We put those threads into the scalp, and we deployed exosomes topically on the scalp as well.
Good. And then what are some other things that people can or are optional or on their daily care that you recommend or on a weekly basis? How often should they use the turbo laser, for example?
So turbo is 5 minutes a day.
Yep.
So that should travel with you wherever you go. If you unsnap the top of it, the front of it, it packs completely flat for travel, right? So here's your turbo laser when it's unpacked and unsnapped. And then when you're ready to use it, you just snap it together and you use it like this. There you go. Over 300 diodes, big coverage, lots of power on that. Some patients are on medical therapy, so they might use finasteride or minoxidil. Finasteride is an oral treatment that inhibits the conversion of testosterone into DHT, so it does lower the DHT substantially in the body. There are other stronger drugs that do that, but finasteride is the primary one that we might use first. Patients also use minoxidil. Minoxidil was the first FDA-approved drug in the form of Rogaine. Most people are familiar with it, a topical format, but we prescribe it mostly now in an oral format. So you could take it in an oral format and it won't have any effect on your blood pressure, no headaches or dizziness, as long as we fine tune the dosage properly. And you can get a pretty powerful hair growth effect from that too. So combining minoxidil and finasteride together in the proper dosing strategy is something that works for most people. Not everybody wants that, but it works for most people.
Now, you mentioned, since I were down there, you've developed some other elements that you've added onto. Maybe you want to outline some of those things that you're doing now. And just for a sidebar, a commentary for our listeners, one of the earmarks of someone who is at the top of their field is they're continuing to integrating new and upgraded technology. They're keeping up to date with the latest and greatest stuff. They're not stuck. And I've seen so many professionals at the highest level who were the best guy 10, 15, 20 years ago, but they're still resting on their laurels and they're not really upgrading. They've got a great practice. They've got a lot of people. They got a lot of customers similar to yourself, and they're just not taking the time to invest in what's the latest and greatest elements. So you can kind of share those. And what's your personal philosophy on keeping up to date? How do you do that to stay on top of the latest developments and maintain your status as the number one guy in North America?
So, when you're shortlisted, whether it be, in the top 20 in the world or number one, whatever it may be, or even just the number one guy in town, there's always people chomping at your heels, and there's always, the haters out there and the competition. But I don't really focus on that at all. I'm really just focused on my patients. And I'm really just generally a curious person. I've always innovated the techniques and technology. The FUE technology that we use to harvest your hair is something that I started to toy around with as an idea in the 1990s, even from, just being through general surgery, seeing what we could do through laparoscopic procedures and how it changed the game for most of our general surgery patients, which is my background, general surgery. I always thought, how can we do the hair transplant less invasively? And so it's always been a part of my, DNA to try to innovate and improve. And so even patients that come back today from 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, they always comment, wow, that's really different. That's amazing. This is new. They're always interested to see what we have. So I would say that I like to travel. So I go to conferences. I like to share my innovations, and I also like to listen. And I think that that's part of it. When you're learning and sharing innovations with people, whether it be within the field of hair restoration or oftentimes outside of the field of hair restoration, that's where my brain gets stimulated. And we learn other things from the world of orthopedics and stem cell therapy. I go to the Cell Surgical Network, the American Academy of Anti-Aging. I've been a member since 1998. I've gone to so many of those conferences year after year. Conferences that are related to dermatology, but other ones that are not. Hair restoration conferences, sure, I'm going to go there. But I'm also going to go to these other, plastic surgery, cosmetic procedure treatments, and so forth, and listen to what they're doing in other areas of medicine, even pharmacogenomics. We have genetic testing now to see what medications you might respond to. Nutritionally, what nutritional supplements we might want to consider based on your DNA, or what lab tests should we do to check to see if you're deficient in something. and that guides our treatment modalities really, really dramatically. And so that's exciting stuff. I have to say, probably the most exciting innovation that I think we could ever have in the field of hair restoration would be hair cloning, right? Hair follicle
Oh, wow.
multiplication. That's the
Wow.
holy grail. Unfortunately, we don't have that yet, but I'm very, very confident that with the innovations that we're seeing in medicine using AI and the researchers that are pursuing this around the world, I know we're going to get there at some point. Now, I can't say, is it 8 years, is it 10 years, maybe it's 5 years. I don't know. But what I know is that when that technology comes available, I know that I want to clone my youngest hair follicles possible. And so what I did 2 years ago is I banked my hair follicle stem cells.
Wow, that's so cool. I just had the birth of my son of 6 months ago.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
thank you. And we registered with a company called Cord Blood Registry, I believe, so that we would get all those beautiful stem cells at the very early on in the earliest cells. I believe that they'll be growing organs and everything else now. And we had those put into a specialized bank that they register all that sort of stuff. So he has all that stuff for the future.
Nice.
And this field is really, really exciting because, I foresee a day where it's literally spare part, okay, well, you need a new liver or you need a new heart or you need a new, critical organ. You can do it. And you're telling me that's going to be the same thing for hair.
I think it's coming. And here's one of the hints, right? So the company that does the hair follicle stem cell banking that we work with, they've already shown that they can take the mesenchymal stem cells from the hair follicle and turn those cells into any cell type in the body. So they can turn those cells into skin cells, they could turn them into nerve cells, they could turn them into muscle cells, they could turn them into bone. And they've done these tests so that maybe they can't grow a bone yet. Maybe they can't grow the cartilage yet. They're working on that. Maybe you're not going to be able to grow an organ next year, but these cells have the capacity to be directed down those paths. And so I think it's very, very exciting. So eventually, we'll have the hair follicle cloning. And so I think that everybody should consider hair follicle stem cell banking. And especially if you're running low, those people who have had previous hair transplants, perhaps, or who have extensive hair loss, and they may worry about supply and demand, you should definitely have your hair follicle stem cells banked. And you know what? It's not super expensive. It's very cost effective. I mean, you can literally bank them for less than the cost of a Netflix subscription per year. I mean, it's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have another question in regards going back to the turbo laser. Is the turbo laser something people can use even before a hair transplant? For example, let's say they start thinning or they want to protect their hair. Is that something that they could use also as an adjunct if you started to hit that point right now, you're like thinking about it or starting to feel you're losing hair volume or growth speed, etc. Is that something they can use? Like, so for example, let's say my wife wanted to use it or something like that.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And for women and for men in the early stages of hair loss, laser light therapy can be a game changer because, if you can get each of those different hair follicles that are a little bit weak to grow a little bit stronger, and you multiply that over the 100,000 follicles that you've got on your scalp or more, you can really get a big change in hair quality, texture, and volume. So like I said, the earlier you seek treatment, the better. Probably one of the things that I hear most commonly from patients, and this is true with hair transplants and the other modalities that we use that regenerate hair, most patients say they wish they had started it sooner. It's like an ounce of prevention, or what they say, is worth a pound of cure. So,
yeah,
and it's so true in hair loss. That if you're thinking that you're losing a little bit of hair, or if a woman is noticing her ponytail volume shrinking a little bit, or she's got to comb her hair to cover a little thinning area or a widening part line, that's the time to seek treatment way in advance. And the same is true for men. If you're starting to see a little bit of recession of the hairline, don't be like Wade. You got to do it earlier. You got to get on top
exactly.
of it. So
that's a good point. Because obviously there's a genetic predisposition for hair loss as well. So
sure.
When would you say, if someone is, let's say, younger and not going there, but maybe their mom or their dad or whatever has already suffered from hair loss early in life or whatever, when is a good time to start looking at your hair as something that you can manage preemptively? And what would your suggestions be around that as kind of like standard hair care for even prior to banking these hair cells, looking at the future with an eye saying, there's probably a highly likelihood I'm going to end up in that situation. Let's get ahead of that because, like you said, it's so much easier then.
People are probably surprised to learn that I have patients in my practice, men who are graduating high school, already have thinning spots in their crown area or receding hairline. And of course, as they're getting off to college and things like that, sometimes treatment modalities are not so convenient to do around that time. But certainly an evaluation is warranted. If you're already seeing the signs, then at least get a measurement. I mean, we don't have to do anything right away. We can just measure and see what's going on. But I have a lot of guys that are going off to college, and girls too. Listen, so PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is the most common hormone abnormality women of childbearing age. And so anytime after puberty, women can experience this kind of constellation of symptoms, and it may be related to inflammation and blood sugar dysregulation and things like that. But basically, they can have weight gain issues, they can have hair in unwanted places, they can have hair loss, acne, oily scalp, things like that. And so we need to address those things at the earliest possible stages, as soon as the symptoms come up. But if your dad has male pattern baldness and your grandpa has male pattern baldness, then you better get on it like before you finish puberty. You just get on top of getting a measurement just so you can see what's going on. And we're not going to do anything heroic or invasive, obviously, in younger patients. We just want to get them on the correct path to start to think about what can we do to protect their hair. And so, kids who are in, I always say kids because I've got kids in college and grad school, so they all look like kids to me. But I would say young men who are in college and maybe going to grad school in that age category, maybe in their early to mid 20s, that's an appropriate time to start prevention, for sure. So I would say, seek out some good measurement tools. One of the reasons why we have locations in New York is for my patients up there to come in and get measured on a regular basis. Obviously, a lot of patients who are here in Florida come in on the off season, so they're here for winter break or spring break. And those young folks are coming in either over the summer or during those breaks in school to get those measurements done. Younger patients in the early stages of hair loss might be appropriate to do PRP therapy or get them on a good nutritional or nutraceutical, or let's talk about stress or good nutrition or how to avoid a toxic lifestyle, which is lacking in sleep and high in stress. I mean, if we can do it, we try to guide them a little bit because all of those things can have an effect on their hair for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think that's also separates you from a lot of clinics out there is that you're doing all these things preemptively. Obviously, you look fantastic as well. So you're versed on all the preventative, the maintenance side, the preemptive side, the latest cutting edge elements. I know you've been a regular presenter at Bulletproof with the biohacking community, and you've had just a little insight out there for all you folks listening. There's a lot of people in the biohacking industry who've gone to see Dr. Bauman to look great and talk about their latest potion, lotion, pill, and thing. But the reality is all of that, they still required Dr. Bauman to look and feel their best. And that's the other thing. One of the things I think that comes, and we can maybe address this because you guys are really mindful. I was really impressed when we did our consultations and we came down to the clinic. Navigating the psychological elements or the resistance that some people might have about addressing their hair loss or the insecurities they have about it or what that means. And especially if you're in the public area or you're in the health industry, people make a snap judgment about how healthy you are, how vital you are. And hair is a big part of that element. And funny enough, I can share from my own personal story. You kind of know that you're losing a little bit of hair prior to or whatever, but you are negligent in really observing. It's kind of like if you're not weighing yourself every day, all of a sudden your pants don't fit, or you're not doing your body fat testing or whatever. You're not working out every day and seeing your things. And there's a slow decline, and there's an acceptance and avoidance of the realities of aging. And the stigma around that and like, are you vain? Are you just like narcissist? Or you don't care? Or so there's all these social programmings that you come over that you have to overcome, as well as essentially one's mortality, because all of these are earmarks that you're going to mortality. How do you look at that, and how do you address that with people? Because I was super impressed with just how thoughtful, sensitive, kind, and considerate your staff was, and everybody seemed to be really aware of all of those stories without actually having to talk about them. Every person's treated as an individual at your clinic, and you do a really unique job of that. What are some of the things that you noticed there?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess one of the things I noticed after treating over 30,000 patients certainly is that, as we said earlier, that hair is a very emotional organ. And so if you're out there and you're noticing whether you're a man or a woman, it really doesn't matter, because, as you say, hair is a sign of youth and vitality. And when it's thinning or weakening, it's a sign that youth and vitality might be slipping away. Even though you feel great, you can hit the gym, you can eat right. Well, all of that work is really not helping your hair, potentially. And sometimes it's actually could be hurting it, like hormone optimization therapy. If you overdo it, testosterone in particular, you can really accelerate hair loss. So there's definitely some things that we talk about with our patients, but like just letting them understand that like hair is something that you had. This is not like, getting a new chin or something like that. You didn't have that. You didn't have that chin before, but you had the hair. So I think, letting people understand and almost giving themselves permission to say, listen, yeah, hair is important to me. How I look is important. My dad always says, look sharp, feel sharp, I guess, from the time that I was little. I think there was a commercial on TV for that. I don't even know what the product was, but it kind of made sense. It's human nature to groom ourselves, and even, our close primate brothers do that as well, and groom each other, actually. But getting up in the morning, like when you said you throw the hat on when your hair doesn't look right. Well, why did you do that? It's because your hair didn't look right, and you
That's
were
right.
a little bit self-conscious about it, even with all the hair that you have today. So I think today there's less of a stigma, and that's the good news, because once you start searching it on the internet, you're going to get hit with the algorithm, and you're going to see everything from crazy procedures that are being done without their overseas. You're going to see people who are doing part-time work, once a month guys. And then you're going to see people like, microneedling, their scalp every single day. I mean, there's some big disasters that are happening out there, unfortunately, even with all this great information that we have now in the world of medicine. So I would just direct a person to say, if you think that your hair is thinning a little bit, or you're not really sure, but you're looking at your family photo and you're like, yeah, my grandpa, my uncles, they all seem to have a little bit of thinning hair. Or if you're a woman and you're noticing a little bit of thinning, don't just run and jump to get hair extensions or something. Get an evaluation, from a board certified hair restoration physician. And it doesn't have to be me. There's lots of other ones around. But connect with us either virtually, and we can do that starting at the website, or come into the office in Boca Raton, or meet us up at the clinic in New York, or some other place in between. And or come to Dave Asprey's biohacking conference. We'll be there, and we can do some measurements for you if you're in Austin this year. But those are some different ideas, for folks out there if they're really struggling with hair loss. The good news is it's something we can do, and I think just knowing that you're on the right path, that automatically changes the mindset that you're doing okay and that we got this.
So for our listeners, can you kind of give the whole lowdown of where they can reach you, how they can get an initial consultation, all the whole laundry list, where you can be reached, any social media stuff, all of those elements, to maybe walk them through saying, you know what, it's time. I got to go down there. I'm going to give my full and ringing endorsement off the get-go. I was, less than gently prodded to go to that whole procedure, because I was kind of in the whatever stage. And I can't thank both you and the people that prodded me to this with the positive results I felt. I didn't realize how much that would positively impact my life, and the level of gratitude I feel every single day when I get up. And I notice it every time I shower. I go, God, my hair just feels great. like I said, I'm a guy that always had thin hair, being, really blonde and all that sort of stuff. You have a different hair follicle than someone has thicker or darker hair. So it was just like, wow, I had no idea. I was really ignorant. I didn't know any better. I didn't even consider this for myself. I wish I had done it sooner. I'm glad I got it done when I did. And I'm here to encourage everyone else who has thought about it, thought it had that moment where like, uh-oh, to say, turn that uh-oh into a yes, yes. Contact Dr. Bauman and his team and get started. So if you can give us what that would look like for our listeners so they can go in and get access to you, and hopefully we'll accelerate your massive business as it is, because it's truly remarkable.
Well, no matter where you are in the world, if you're out there and you're thinking about a hair loss being part of your situation and you're hoping that it doesn't get worse, or you're looking to try to get it better, thicker, stronger, obviously baumanmedical.com, BAUMAN medical.com is the place for all of your information to get started on the journey. There's literally thousands and thousands of pages of information I've written over 2 decades, and almost 3 decades now. And there's hundreds of hours of videos that you can watch. And of course, there's hundreds and hundreds of podcasts and news interviews and things like that where you can glean information. So if you want to look at before and after photos, or you want to learn about the latest and greatest types of therapeutic interventions like the laser or cell therapy or PRP, or even the no shave harvest hair transplant where we don't have to shave your head anymore to do the procedure, all of that can be found at baumanmedical.com. And even if you feel like, well, geez, I'm not close to Boca Raton, Florida, we can connect virtually through your, wherever you are, in your home or on your phone. Again, through the website, through a virtual evaluation, and the journey can start there. We can start to dissect into what are the lifestyle factors, what are the therapies you've already been doing. Let's look at those photos. Let's look at you on the video and see what's really going on, and determine a plan of action. Maybe you don't necessarily need to come in right away, but we can start some things from afar. But of course, I would never not invite you to the home office here in Boca Raton, my 13,000 square foot, some people call it the hair hospital, although that sounds kind of clinical, where you'll find the same folks that have been helping my patients for 10 to 20 years. Many of my team members have been with us that long. And that's why Wade had that experience, because they are compassionate, they're professional, and they're experts at helping patients and our clients through the process of dealing with the hair loss situation and sorting out all of the different things that need to be done in order to get you to your goal. Some patients are attracted to the technology. We have AI-powered microscopes and advanced genetic testing and 3D simulations of what your hair could look like. But more importantly in all that, it's my team. They're amazing, and I'm blessed to have them every single day. I'm thankful, and I have gratitude for my team for the way they've taken care of our patients for so many years. And hopefully, if you're out there, we take care of you the same way. So baumanmedical.com. Of course, you can find me on social media, and there's a YouTube channel and all that other stuff. And I do answer my own DMs typically. So if you want a quick message to me, find me on social media and send me a message, and I'll try to get back to you. But if you really want to become a patient, then you got to click schedule evaluation, and that's a button on the website, and that way you'll get into the practice, and we'll get chatting about how we can help you get you to your goals.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day, Dr. Bauman. Once again, express my gratitude and my full endorsement of everything that you and your team do. I'm excited about these new developments, and I will, when I come down to Florida this time, I'm going to scoot up from where I'm scheduled to go and come up to your clinic in Boca Raton. It's beautiful, and we'll get that extra treatment in. And I'm going to the laser machine after this podcast today, because I'm like, okay, wait, time to get back into the saddle here. Thanks so much for joining us, and for all our listeners.
Thanks for having me.
Having a great hair. I can tell you, as someone who didn't have great hair and went to great hair, it was like, wow, what a difference. What a difference in how you feel about yourself and how other people perceive you, and how you're perceived does indicate how people interact with you. And getting your hair on top of the game, Dr. Bauman is your guy. So with that, we'll end the episode. Thanks for joining us from everyone at Bioptimizers. This is the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm Wade T. Lightheart, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.